Assalamualaikum.
Welcome back to the Disrupting the Narrative podcast.
This is our second episode. Today we have Jad. He used to be a Case Western student, so we'll have him introduce himself. What did you study? What are you doing now?
Hi, as I said, my name is Jad. I'm a current alumni of Case Western Reserve University, and I currently go to law school at Cleveland State University.
Mashallah. What's your background?
So my mom is Palestinian, my dad's African American, so a perfect combination for today's climate.
Yeah. Subhanallah. And where are you from in Palestine?
So Nablus.
Nablus.
But my grandfather was removed and had to flee during the Nakba, and then he actually went back to take more of his family members during the 6 Days War. So a lot of my family members are either in Jordan, Egypt, or Lebanon.
Wow.
Interesting.
I didn't know that. So that makes sense why you're driven to do this.
Yes, yeah.
Have you ever gone back and visited?
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, my family is on a blacklist in Israel.
Wow.
So yeah.
What
So
did you guys
even
do again?
so some of my family members are part of the PLO or were part of the PLO.
Yeah.
So my middle name is blacklisted. So even with my American passport, I can't really go.
What's your middle name?
Kamhawi.
Oh.
Inshallah, one day you'll get the right of return.
Right.
You know? That's actually so sad.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Mashallah. Okay.
So our first question. So we know that you were part of the encampment. You did the news report with what was it with the?
So I've done one with Observer. I've done with News Channel 5.
News Channel
I've done
5.
one with Channel 8 and Signal News as well.
So we were like, who better to get than someone who's already like very experienced with the speaking. You led a lot of the protests there. You were a very big organizer, and we wanted to ask you to describe your like initial inspiration for the encampment and the goals behind organizing the Palestinian divestment encampment as well at Case.
I've personally been involved at Case for a long time. I want to say like total of 3 years. Since my sophomore year of undergrad, I was involved with Palestinian advocacy. I didn't take a leadership role. Actually, I took the leadership role my sophomore year as well, and that eventually built up to what is the encampment. Now, for the initial planning stages of the encampment, I'm personally not going to take too much credit for that because at the time SJP was kind of in a debacle. We were trying to get reinstated as a student org, so I was trying to politic, trying to get us student recognition back, and Yusuf actually was the person who was really the big original lead organizer for just the initial stages of the encampment. But it's just looking back, it was really funny because like I think 2 weeks out before Yusuf was just like certain like, hey, like this is what we want to do, he texted me. He's just like, hey Jad, like you ready to get arrested? I'm like, let's do it.
Wow. That's so Yusuf. So SJP was suspended at the time before, right?
Yeah.
I remember because I go to John Carroll and we would collab with Case all the time, and then all of a sudden you guys kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
And because you guys were facing so much from the school and a lot of suppression and just like they just did not like you guys.
Yeah, it was honestly, it was really bizarre because like back then like I would say SJP went through a lot of different phases. Like we were at one point at like my freshman year we were more of a cultural and political like dual org, and then when I took over we switched more onto the political side of things. We got that investment bill passed, and ever since that, like Case has just been just literally the most hostile environment for Palestinians ever.
And so, what kind of inspired you? Because I know that the encampments were going on all around America, and why did you feel like was it like a pressure or like what inspired you to make Case like a spot? Because in Ohio, Cleveland at least, it was one of the only schools who did the encampment. And guys have a huge name, and I think, do you feel like that was a sort of a pressure?
I think we had a lot of momentum. I think one, like, we eventually grew SAP to be one of the largest and most active student organizations on campus. As well as, like, we've had, like, at this point, like, a history of, like, both, like, huge accomplishments, but also, like, immediate huge setbacks as well. Or I guess just the administration just
like challenging
and just trying to fight back, like, as much as possible against, like, what we were trying to build. And I think, like, between me and the other executives at SJP, we're all just really frustrated. And I think Case didn't believe that we could do something, even though, like, that KSL Oval is literally the perfect, like, spot to set one of those up. And
which became Hens Oval, wasn't it?
Yeah, Hens Oval. Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, if you look at the history of Case, there were a lot of student-led movements, like, historically, like the Vietnam War, for example. But the way that Case administration has interacted with the Palestinian student movement versus other liberations was way different. So when you did start this encampment and it, like, took off and you made Hens Oval, how did you engage with other students, faculty, and admin regarding the encampment, their reactions, their pushbacks? Like, how was your engagement with it?
I have a lot of really fun stories to tell.
Okay.
So, you know, during the encampment, we kind of had to realize that, like, hey, a lot needs to go into just making sure that, first and foremost, that it's, like, a safe environment. Like, I think when talking to the other executives, everyone felt like I was best suited to take the lead organizer role, to be the face and make sure everything was, like, cohesive. And one thing that I personally wanted, because a lot of my fellow student colleagues, like, asked this of me, was to make sure that it was safe. Like, make sure everyone was safe. There's a lot of students that, you know, weren't American citizens. There were a lot of students that, like, it was just a small school. And, you know, Case is also known to be a nerdier school. It's not like all of us are super physically imposing people. So I was asked to, like, keep it like safe. And so I was in charge of, you know, making sure everyone was calm, and also engaging with the agitators or the Zionists. And the really fun thing that I used to do was I would take Zionists on tours of the encampment.
Are you serious?
So like, if a group of people, like, just started to, like, give rise to emotions, just, like, pretty much try to start a fight, which Zionists unfortunately often do, I would ask everyone to, like, hey, like, if there's someone that's just, like, getting on your nerves or asking you a bunch of questions about what we're doing, what we're fighting for, like, point them over to me. So I could probably estimate, I probably took 15 Zionists on tours on the encampment over the course of 11 days. And I think the fun thing about the tour is that, like, they eventually began to understand that, like, it helped them to take the big picture kind of aside, because we all have our own personal, even though their side is obviously just trash. But I think, like, they just said, like, oh, hey, you know, Cases objectively targeting a group of students on campus. Oh, like, hey, this is a relatively reasonable and simple thing for Case administration to do. Oh, you know, Jad, you're actually a pretty cool dude. Like, some things,
humanizes
exactly. I think that
the way they paint you guys was like you guys were monsters. The way they paint Palestinians and everything. Yeah, the emails were crazy. Every 2 days.
Yeah.
So that's how you kind of interacted with, like, the agitators.
Yeah.
But another op that y'all had was administration. They were not conversing with you. I remember that they would just send out very
like those blast emails.
Yeah.
So, like, targeting.
I think that was probably the most frustrating element of the encampment. And I think, looking back, that was probably the one thing I probably would have gone back and done slightly differently. Because I personally kind of let the stress of the encampment at certain points get the better of me.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I think I was consistently probably on site at the encampment most often compared to all the other organizers, because I was a senior, so like when it came to final exams, like if I didn't do well in my final exam, I'm graduating anyways. It wasn't that deep, but a lot of the other organizers weren't seniors, so like they had to come back next year. Their grades still kind of matter, and I think that the second and third day, there were days that I felt that administration wasn't really like taking me seriously and taking the encampment seriously. And that was super frustrating because what they would do is they'll come in, set a bunch of these really, really difficult like set of standards that I would actually just try to adhere to the best of my ability.
What
just
were
so like the first day, for instance, like they swept. They took down all the tents. They swept. They arrested 21 students in a matter of 30 minutes, like just completely unnecessary, complete escalation. And their whole thing was like they simply didn't want the tents up. I'm like, yo, like we could have had a conversation before you literally drag a bunch of students out of tents, and like if you would have had this conversation, like had like actual cordial civil discourse, we could have went a long way, and we did. And I literally explained like, hey, like a lot of these students, we're all peacefully protesting. You see, this is going differently than some other campuses, like unfortunately, like Ohio State, Texas, and Columbia, where a lot of people are getting arrested, a lot of people are getting hurt. Our encampment was a really peaceful protest overall, and we showed that. I'm like, but a lot of students are going to want to stay here overnight. Like this is the point of this protest. Like we are literally standing in physical opposition to everything that you guys are standing for in terms of how you're treating Palestinian students and how you're over your general outlook on the greater conflict as a whole. And through conversations, we were eventually able to actually set up a system that would have actually worked long term in hindsight, where students would pretty much students would be able to stay overnight and community members would go home. Like that was a reasonable setup. Now what really pissed me off the second day, well, one, like the encampment overall got way more traction. I think I did like 35 interviews from news outlets on that day alone. But what really pissed me off is that admin just disappeared the whole day. Like literally the whole day. Like they showed up in the morning to make sure we took the tents down, even though it was raining outside, which pissed me off. I was like, listen, I was like, dude, like we're gonna be a little slow because it's raining outside. Like he just like he's just like, you're going back on the deal. Like no, man. Like do you see the weather conditions? But then after we took the tents down, like all admin disappeared.
You said how they didn't interact with you at all. Was there a point where, because they didn't take you serious, when do you feel they did start taking you serious? And then my second question was, like, was there some sort of agreement that reached in the end between you and the administration or the university in general?
Oh no, not at all. So to answer your first question, I think literally it's funny. The second day they took us seriously because they brought the entirety of Case police force to try to sweep us out, and they couldn't do it because we had, I think at that point, we had I think probably 200 people, like, and we had like an organized formation and everything, and it was just solid. Like if Case was gonna sweep us out, like they were gonna hurt a lot of students, and that was gonna look really, really bad. So they didn't, and I think at that point they realized that, hey, with just Case Police Department and University Circle Police Department, like we are understaffed and we are not well equipped to sweep these people out. So pretty much they couldn't remove us, even though they definitely really wanted to. And I think at that point is when they were finally trying to treat myself seriously in the negotiations and the encampment. Unfortunately, I got frustrated and cut contact with the lesser administrators, which in reality, if I would have potentially kept that line open.
That's something you would have changed looking back.
Probably, yeah.
I also had a question from what you were talking about. You said how you and some of the other organizers had different like points of views, different standards, different like expectations. How did you guys navigate that as a group? Because I can imagine that's very difficult. Even like within, I mean, we even think about it on like a global level and like in our governments and stuff like that, when like there's so many factions or different perspectives. Like on a huge level. So of course on a student I mean, even in my student organization, we always had disagreements. How did you guys navigate those and stand as like a unit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, one, there's different, like you said, there were different factions. Just so in our executive body, which was mostly all students, and then we would like call like Chance and a few other of the community organizers that had experience with protests to just advise. But, you know, there's, you know, younger students, there were law students, there's kind of me kind of in the middle of those two kind of areas. And yeah, and not only that, prior to that, we organized everyone based on what we call like a risk level. Red is like you're just down to get arrested immediately.
Wow, that's very organized.
Yellow was just like, hey, like if all the reds get arrested, I'll get arrested next. And green is like, under no circumstances am I getting put in the back of a police car.
Yeah, who are those people?
What?
Who are those people?
The greens?
Yeah.
Just like mostly the general body.
I feel like the
But-
foreign students that are
Yeah.
on student visa. It would be
Exactly.
So dangerous for them.
Yeah. So almost all of them were greens.
Yeah.
There was one night I remember, I don't know, my alarm was going off at 4 a.m. I was sleeping there, and I didn't know that I was sleeping in like the red tent with all the like shields. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember
I
that.
don't remember.
I was just like, oh.
But like it was so organized. Like the middle tent was like the reds that I ended up passing out in
Yeah.
by myself in this giant tent.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah,
was
you were gonna get arrested if they would have got through. I was just
Oh
like,
my god.
It was funny.
So
Wrong
that's how
place,
you
wrong
guys
time.
were set up the encampment too. Wow.
yeah. So
That's so organized.
it was real. I mean, like I think when we like me and Yusuf, we'd have a joke every night because me and him would share a tent most night, you know. But
Cute.
right. But like the joke before we like go to bed and right when we wake up was, hey, like I hope we don't get arrested tomorrow morning.
Right.
And then when we wake, I was like, hey, we're not in the back of a police car, yay. But
Encampment pillow talk.
yeah, you're right. Crazy work. Hey,
That's so cool.
desperate times.
Desperate times.
What is your
Desperate measures.
your favorite and then your least favorite part of the encampment?
I think that my favorite part was just kind of like the beauty of the moment. I think for me personally, it was the first time that I ever, this is going to sound extremely nerdy, but it was the first time in my life that I genuinely prioritized something over school.
Okay, wow.
More so, it was just like, it was like a collection of people from like a lot of like different backgrounds that all came together and were at least able to appreciate the moment. Even though that like people might really be down for the cause, be kind of down for a cause, not really care, just want to be there for the memes and whatnot, and honestly just genuine ops that would literally just try to, you know, honestly it was that's another fun part, but like a lot of the ops, they would come back and try to like debate me on something, and when they lose, they'd leave or just hang around and like eat food and stuff and chill. I'm like, yo, like
That's insane.
I'm like, cool, but like anyway, it was that was probably my favorite part. My least favorite part was being hospitalized. That sucked. And then I had to go to the hospital. Because I think being just exposed to the elements every single day was just not great, on top of the stress of leaving the encampment and trying to finish school.
There was one moment I remember, Jad, that it was a protest, and I think what you're talking about, like, it actually hit you, that like you prioritize something bigger than yourself, bigger than everything that was happening at school, and like you got emotional during a protest. It was so emotional. I think we were all crying. You were speaking.
Yeah, I think it was the fourth day. I remember this. I think it was. Honestly, in hindsight, this moment's kind of ironic. I cried a lot that day for a lot of different reasons, but I think the biggest time was we marched everyone down to Adelbert. And what was really crazy about that moment was that the year prior, I led a protest. It was SJP's like first bigger protest, and we did it at Adelbert. We did a walkout, and I had a speech. The funny thing about that was like I got up all incognito with like with my keffiyeh and everything, and then like one of the other organizers just like, oh, this is Jad Ogelsby. I'm like, okay. But it was just really crazy that like just seeing how many people came out not only to support the movement but to support me. It was just a really beautiful moment that I personally couldn't keep the tears back from.
Yeah. It really was beautiful. It was like so powerful.
Yeah.
So during the encampment, you kind of touched on it. What some really difficult things were that you encountered sometimes with admin, agitators. But what were like, again, some major challenges that you can pinpoint, and how did you like go about them and address them?
I think some of the initial challenges was trying to it was actually to reorganize.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned at the beginning when Yusuf was just like, Jad, you ready to get arrested? Like that was what we thought was going to happen within 2 days. Like we only had 2 days of planning because we thought we were going to get arrested by day 2.
Right.
So when we realized like, hey, we're still here, and not only are we still here, like we can like make something crazy. We had to reorganize quickly. We had to delegate different roles to different people, and we had to make sure that everyone like committed to every role. And that was the crazy part, is that everyone really, really did to every single role. Like the security, like people were up from 2 a.m. to like 8 a.m, and then they would go home. Like we had shifts. Like it was actually like a very crazy like system that we had going on. But I think so reorganizing in the beginning was really difficult.
Yeah.
Maintaining the security of the encampment was really difficult because we had a few instances of both campers kind of doing stuff that was questionable. So one of the community members made someone uncomfortable, a female student uncomfortable. I had to go and address that. Turns out that like he didn't intend for that to be the case, but unfortunately everyone's in really close proximity to each other all the time, and like that's just stuff that needs to be addressed immediately because that could get really bad.
Of course.
And then another thing is that a lot of people were either coming in at ungodly points in the night, and just literally there was one guy, like if we didn't have the security team, like pretty much this group of frat boys would have probably came in and tried to like wreck some of the tents. Like they came in with like bandanas and stuff like that.
That's scary.
Yeah, it was like, but like we were ready. We were ready. They wanted the smoke. Like the security team, they post stuff like this, like, hey, yo, what's good? And they walked away. But the biggest thing, the only issue that we were never able to address was this one dude named Lawrence.
Oh my God.
That guy, I think, we just didn't have an answer for him because one, because the other agitator, I forget his name, was banned from campus. Alec was banned from campus. So even though he was a nut, he wouldn't have been able to walk in and just like disrupt everything. But unfortunately, Lawrence was equally a nut, and
Lawrence was a paid actor by now.
yeah, but like he was just crazy, and he went in, and there was really not much we can do about it.
What did he do?
He would just come in, and like there were a few times where like he could have genuinely started fights, and also like he was unfortunately like very good at picking the perfect time to show up and just cause a disruption. The biggest one in my brain was Jim of Prayer. That Friday was like, it was such a beautiful moment. For those who don't know, like I'm personally not Muslim, but at that time that was like the encampment occurred directly after I had practiced my first Ramadan. So I was just like witnessing this like very like beautiful tradition that you guys have, and then just for him to come in and just like try to ruin it, like it was really frustrating for me, but it was also embarrassing because like I wanted to protect this like very like special practice that you guys have, and I wasn't able to do that because he walked in and just, now granted everyone that was participating in prayer like did a fantastic job of just focusing on what was important and not getting agitated and stuff and not reacting. But
that's completely like disrespectful and very disgusting.
It was.
Especially during a religious like time. Like it's just so it doesn't make sense.
The sheikh ate him up though.
Oh really?
yeah, he did. He was very.
He was making a dua and he's like, may Allah destroy those who disrupt those who pray or something like
Yeah.
that.
I love out of pocket for you.
I know. Sheikh Musa.
Oh, I love Sheikh Musa.
Yeah. You never saw Lawrence?
No.
Lawrence was a Majnun, like he was crazy.
And the thing is, the thing that made me like just to be candid, like the brother was black, and that hurt me because I'm like, you should be supporting me. One thing, a slight side tangent, but the one thing that I really learned from the encampment was that in order to fight hate, you can't really fight people who just hate you for being who you are. Like there's no convincing them. There's really nothing you can do. What you can do is make it really difficult to maintain their hate and maintain their logic. That is something that I really learned, because I think for me what made it frustrating for them to talk to me is that when I met them at Common Grounds, when I just talked to them like they're normal human beings, they either had to choose to continue to act like idiots, and hate me because I'm Palestinian, I'm black, I'm leading this protest that's against their white Zionist values, or they have to forfeit that hatred and retain their logic. And I think that is what it's a really hard thing to practice, because like you have to be in the presence of someone that literally just wish you didn't exist. So but if like more people could like learn how to do that, I think we, like people in general, would be able to resolve a lot more conflicts. And I think hatred would just be a much more difficult endeavor.
That's very
Definitely. So you address them with like the law student in you to either.
I was gonna say
Get rid of
that.
their logic.
I was thinking that's a perfect law school essay.
I mean, I think the best example would be, they would bring up like, oh, like Hamas is terrorists, like yada yada yada, like that's why Israel's like bombing Gaza right now. I'm like, okay, what's a country that spent 10 years fighting terrorism, and what that country like had to change in order to win that war on terrorism? The United States. You know what the United States learned that wasn't a good idea? Oh, using drone strikes, using bombs that targeted infrastructure and mass populations. Instead, we switched to using surgical strikes, using, special forces to take out very specific people. And when you're trying to organize something that isn't institutionalized, if you take out the leaders, it becomes really hard to continue the organization. But that's exactly what Israel's not doing.
Yeah.
And I would tell them that. So I'm like, I literally I'd break that all down to them. I'm like, hey, not only does Israel know the most effective way to take out a terrorist organization,
they've done it before, and it's not like anything.
They're choosing not to. They're choosing not to. So I literally asked them this question at the very end. I'm like, hey, do you think Israel is ignorant and stupid? Or do you think that they have a different agenda than destroying Hamas? And they would never be able to answer that question.
They don't want to answer.
They would never be able to answer that. But I think it's difficult to talk to these people for long periods of time.
One of the questions that I had was about what were like the most significant outcomes or some of the goals and demands that you guys had, and were they met, and what do you feel like you gained out of this encampment, or what were the impacts of it? So
the goals were amnesty for students that were involved in pro-Palestinian advocacy, whether that be, drafting a bill, a prior protest, putting up flyers, like any of that. Like we wanted to halt all student conduct investigations on all those people. We wanted them to actually listen to our undergraduate student government, which we worked really hard to pass that bill and draft it in a way that was articulate and fair.
With the divestment bill.
The divestment bill. And we were just like, hey, listen to your students, because a lot of people don't know,
And wasn't the bill even very vague? Like it was towards Israel, right? Or
It was targeted towards Israel for sure. It was
but
very
was it in the
spoke.
clauses? Because someone, I remember I talked to somebody because we were thinking of losing it, and she said it wasn't like a BDS bill.
No, see, that's what it wasn't. There wasn't That's what, because a BDS bill would be like, oh, since Israel is a immoral state, we want to divest and sanction and boycott Israel. That is not what that bill was. That is true, but it was targeted at Israel. And the point of the bill was to say, hey, listen, like, we know Case probably invests a lot in Israel, which I personally know that they do.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
they broadcast it.
Right.
It's not.
And because of this, we want to specifically target said investments that are particularly proliferating either their prison or military industrial complex. Only those two things. If you want to support an Israeli food chain, if you want to support and finance Israeli
Students,
manufacturing, a college or whatever, like, that's fair game. Like, go for it.
Yeah.
We just simply asked to, like, hey, like, if you're pretty much building bombs, if you are building prisons, if you are financing these illegal occupations of Palestine, like, divest. Investigate and divest. That is what the bill said. And it's very reasonable because you know what? In 2004, Case Western Reserve University passed a bill very similar to that against Sudan.
Really?
When Darfur happened. A lot of people don't know
Wow.
this, but students wanted to boycott and divest Case's assets from Sudan. And the Board of Trustees did exactly that. Granted, I doubt there wasn't really any, there wasn't really any investments, I'd imagine, in Sudan from Case, but they still did it. They did it. And to just see that, like, the double standard, just because, like, oh, like, this is a Zionist institution with Zionist donors, and, you know, we're just going to that human atrocity is atrocious, but, you know, 60,000 Palestinian men, women, and children dead for seamless reasons. They're innocent people, like a genocide. And they didn't flinch. In fact, they actively fought against that notion. So it was just really disgusting. Next, we wanted to divest. We wanted to end all, like, foreign exchange student trips to Israel, because that was, like, something that we thought was, like, insane.
So that's the third.
Oh yeah. Then disclose all the investments. Like, just make some of them open. Especially the ones that, disclose, divest, those kind of went hand in hand. We wanted a permanent ceasefire resolution, which in my brain is just the easiest thing. Like, that to me, what I was, like, negotiating, I was just like, how could you not? How is calling for peace a controversial thing to do?
Yeah.
Like, just saying, hey, like, even if you don't support Palestinian sovereignty, just literally just being like, hey, you know, I actually am not cool with men, women, and children being needlessly bombed to death.
Yeah. And it's for
You
both
know?
sides.
And both sides, yeah. You know, I'm not cool
Like,
with
that is
October
actually
7th.
the most.
That is just the most, like, bare bones, simple.
Yeah.
And I was literally just like, you know what? I'll do the work for you. I will draft this. I will present it to you.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can just post it. I will just make it as like
plain and simple,
as possible. But no, they weren't down for that, which was just crazy to me. And then I lost count of
I think you
things.
have 2 left.
Yeah, 5 and 6.
5 and 6.
I think, right?
We wanted to retract all statements.
Yeah.
From pretty much late, because there's a thing that Case was doing, was just like, oh, you're pro-Palestine, you're anti-Semitic. Like, no. Like, no, we are not. We have one, that term is starting to get on my nerves, because, you know, Palestinians are Semites, but, you know, I guess we can let white people colonize the term Semite too. But additionally, it's just like Israel is a nation. Being Jewish is a faith. You can criticize the nation without criticizing the faith.
And what would you tell students for the future who are currently facing some sort of suppression at an institutional level? Like, what advice would you give? And like, yeah, just for the current or future students, whoever may be watching.
I think the first thing is that, you know, students have a lot more power than, you know, they think they do. And I think, you know, the cliche, like, knowledge is power, like, is so important. Like, know what your obligation to the institution is, and know what the institution's obligation to you are, and you can play within those rules for the most part if you're not trying to get into serious trouble or get suspended or whatnot.
Yeah.
And furthermore, on the other end, if you are someone that is, you know, really feels passionately, like, you know, myself and many others have at Case, be patient. You know, there's a time and a place for everything. Not every action of resistance has to be grand. I think, you know, for us, looking back at the encampment wouldn't have worked if we didn't have the fall semester that we had, and we didn't have the spring semester that we had. If we didn't have consistent events just outright. If we didn't sell kafiyas to people. There was a time where literally 75% of people at Case, whether they were Arab or not, were wearing kafiyas. And that is that in itself is just a physical representation of solidarity and resistance. So like use smaller events to build up to the big event, because that big event will hit a lot harder and will honestly be kind of a climax to all the work and all the effort that you yourself have been putting into. But realize that, you know, we're all fighting this together, and we all are doing our part.
Wow, good. This was so good.
It was so good.
I had so much fun.
It was actually so good.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jad, for coming.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate it so much. This was so powerful, and I actually learned a lot about like the behind the scenes of the encampment. We see so much online, and we saw a lot that, you know, happened throughout those days, but it's very different to hear like the behind the scenes and the personal like reflections that you have. So
Yeah, I appreciate
and
that.
I feel like for the old hammos and people that don't really understand why are you radical kids doing something in Jad's perspective could really help with understanding.
What we did here, how did the institution react? What did anything come out of it?
Oh
Demands?
no. I think that
No.
yeah, I think
that's
that was disappointing, but I think that was expected, because I think that really told me two things. Like one, like wow, like we are really hitting the money. We're hitting them at the money. Like they have a lot of money, and not only invested in Israel, but they're donors. A lot of the donor money is Zionist money too. So just the way that they fought against just a massive student body was insane. It was just really something that opened my eyes. I'm like, wow, like
nothing, like zero.
No. In fact, actually, the only difference that came out of it was, for me personally, is that one, I got permanently banned from campus. Sad. And the only change that they made was against Palestine and not for it. And I think that they made it worse. Yeah.
With the communal wins, I feel like we're working.
No, I
so
agree.
much media attention. You completely put Case on blast. I mean, now with the Title VI, Case is color.
I do think like how that the snowball effect that it has, even though the encampment itself, I think it had so many successes for the community, for you guys as people, like growing and stuff like that. Although it didn't reach like your demands or anything, but this snowball effect that it's having, like people are gonna remember this in years to come. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's like the older generation. I think it was really beautiful for them, because it's like something like the encampment was just not an option, or just not feasible. Like a lot of Arabs, unfortunately, like had to like assimilate to survive, and like being pro-Palestine or just being openly Arab or Muslim at a point in time in the United States was damning. Like you'd just be automatically labeled a terrorist, and like Arabs and Palestinians had to hide for a long time. So it was funny looking back because like my parents and a lot of the fellow student organizers' parents were all freaking out. But when a lot of them finally came down to the encampment, like they were just like they themselves were in tears and they were just in awe because like this was just not possible for them.
It's so liberating to see like your community just like existing, you know.
That was the
together.
first.
It was nice.
Yeah, my brother who's like 42, 43, like he never came to a protest. That was his first time he came with him and his wife, and he and his wife were bawling their eyes out. Like it was so nice. So rapid fire is like a bunch of just random questions.
Go for it. I'm ready.
Jad's rapid fire. Okay. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Paella. Which it's a Spanish dish with a bunch of like different seafoods in there.
Okay.
Get hip to that.
If you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
To speak any language.
Wow.
Yeah.
Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
What's your favorite childhood movie?
Oh shoot, that's a good question. Childhood movie. Shoot, this is supposed to be rapid fire. We're gonna go Transformers 2.
Transformers 2. Dream travel destination?
Japan.
Would you rather explore the ocean or outer space?
Outer space.
What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
The Encampment.
I was gonna say.
A beach vacation or mountain retreat?
Beach vacation.
If you could teleport anywhere right now, where would you go?
The moon.
What's your zombie apocalypse survival plan?
A lot of guns in a basement and a food mart.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Flight.
What would you do with $1 million?
Invest.
And if you were invisible for a day, what would you do?
If I was invisible for a day? That's lame. Being invisible is such a lame superpower.
Why are you a hater? You could do so much.
Well, bang.
See, it's just a nefarious superpower to have. Like no like superhero has invisibility as a superpower. Invisibility is for bad people.
You could go to Kaler and tickle him.
That would be fun. Commit no.
Alright.
I'm gonna say nothing.
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 You're a good law-abiding citizen.
The law-abiding citizen. Because one of these, when this gets out, someone's gonna have this clip and be like, "He's a bad person." I'm a good person, everyone.
Yes, very good person. Okay, thank you so much. We will see you guys on episode 3, inshallah.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank
We'll
you.
see
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next episode.